Welcome back to The Deep Dive. This is the place where we take the most complex and fascinating analyses happening right now in the world of technology, cut through all the noise, and really distill them down to what matters for you. I actually want to start today with a quick personal story.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, last week I had to process this truly massive document, a 300-page regulatory filing. I mean, it was dense, cross-referenced, and honestly, a perfect candidate for a very long nap.
I know the feeling.
Right. Historically, that's, 2 days of my life just gone. Reading, compiling notes. Instead, I fed it to a generative AI tool with a really specific prompt. I said, summarize the 3 biggest compliance risks for a company in sector X and do it in bullet points.
And what happened?
Well, in about 4 minutes, I had a working draft that was, I'd say, 85% accurate. It saved me something like 16 hours of work, and it just fundamentally changed my whole process. It wasn't perfect, it still needed a human to fact check it. But that experience, that sudden, really practical shift from, oh, this is an interesting little novelty, to, wait a second, this is permanently changing the unit economics of knowledge work. That's exactly the massive shift we're diving into today.
That's a perfect example.
Our source material is this incredible analysis by the independent analyst Benedict Evans from his November 2025 report. It's simply titled, AI Eats the World.
A classic title.
It is. And Evans argues that generative AI isn't just another tech trend. He says it is the next major platform shift in technology history. So our mission today is to unpack what that really means. For the giants spending billions, for the startups, and most importantly, for your own workflow.
It's the right way to frame it because the core strength of Evans's argument is that he forces us to view the present through the lens of history. He outlines this repeatable pattern of platform shifts over the last 50 years or so. It shows us where all the current excitement and, frankly, confusion fits.
So what's that pattern, that sequence?
He defines it as going from mainframes, which were, locked away in corporate data centers,
right,
to personal computers, which brought computing to the desktop. Then the web, which connected everyone. After that, smartphones, making computing totally ubiquitous and mobile. And now, he says, generative AI.
And it's not just a list of new gadgets, is it?
No, not at all. It's a progression where each new platform completely resets the rules of the game and the sources of power.
Okay, let's unpack that, because that's crucial. When a platform shifts, Evans says there are these universal effects, right? What are those effects, both inside and outside of tech?
Well, inside the tech world, the consequences are immediate and dramatic. All the innovation, the big investment, the company creation, it essentially switches over to the new thing.
Like a magnet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Iron filings to a magnet. You see it in VC funding. New startup ideas. They all gravitate to the new platform. And this leads to new gatekeepers. The people who control the essential infrastructure, whether that's the OS, the hardware, or in this case, maybe the foundation models, the old ways of making money become obsolete.
So if you were a desktop software company, you had to learn the web fast. And what about externally, for everyone else?
Outside of tech, every other business is forced to make a rapid strategic decision, usually under a lot of pressure. They have to answer this fundamental 3-part question.
Which is
this new platform just a tool to make us more efficient? Is it a source of totally new revenue streams? Or, and this is the scary one, is this an existential threat that could redefine our entire industry?
And you have to answer that question really, really quickly. I mean, think about the taxi industry realizing the smartphone was an existential threat.
Precisely. If you delay, you risk being made obsolete. The stakes are just enormous, which is why the history lesson Evans gives on the fragility of dominance is so relevant right now.
The Microsoft story is perfect here. For decades, they controlled the PC with Windows. They had near total control of global computer sales. They were the king.
They were, but that dominance was territorial. When the center of gravity shifted to smartphones, Microsoft's huge control over the old landscape became, well, pretty much irrelevant.
Their desktop share was still high, but on the new platform iOS and Android, they were nowhere.
Exactly. It's a stark warning. Your massive moat can suddenly just run dry when the platform shifts.
So that's about losing dominance, but there's also the pattern of early leaders just failing. That's another lesson that should make today's frontrunners, even a company like OpenAI, a little nervous.
Absolutely. The first to market is so rarely the long-term winner. I mean, look back at the early days of the PC. Apple was a huge influential leader in sales.
Sure.
But the ultimate dominance went to the IBM-compatible ecosystem, which allowed giants like Intel and Microsoft to rise. We see it again and again. Netscape invented the browser, but lost to Internet Explorer. MySpace paved the way for Facebook.
So the pioneers clear the path, but someone else builds the city.
A great way to put it. The pioneers burn the cash, but they often don't build the lasting value capture mechanisms. Technology itself has always superseded. It's the ability to capture value through distribution or network effects that lasts.
And that brings us to the present, which just feels exponentially more confusing. Evans calls this period the fog of war. We're just bombarded with new concepts, new products every day. It's easy to forget how much noise and failure there was at the start of other shifts.
We only remember the winners, don't we? We romanticize the internet shift as just the start of Google and Amazon. We forget about the money poured into failed models like AOL's walled garden or Pointcast or Flash.
How Flash was everywhere.
It was. And they were billion-dollar companies that just vanished. And in the mobile era, we had things like iMode from Japan, WAP, specialized software like J2ME. And of course, Nokia and BlackBerry seemed invincible because they controlled the hardware. All of them are basically relics now.
And today, the fog is thickest because we don't even know what the main interface for this new platform will be.
The ambiguity is startling. Is it a web browser, or is it, these highly sophisticated agentic systems that act on your behalf? Is it voice? Is it new hardware, like wearables? The real winner, the equivalent of the mobile OS, is still completely up for grabs.
Okay, when you say agentic systems, for anyone listening who's tracking the jargon, what's the actual difference between that and just a really good chatbot like ChatGPT?
That is a crucial distinction. A simple chatbot is reactive. You give it a prompt, it gives you a response. The end.
Right.
An agentic system is proactive and goal-oriented. It can take a high-level goal, plan multiple steps to achieve it using external tools, execute that plan, monitor the results, and this is the key course correct if it hits an error.
So it moves from being a fancy calculator to being a sort of autonomous assistant.
Exactly. And all this confusion fuels the massive hype cycle. Evans notes that every tech bubble involves people drawing straight lines on log-scale charts, projecting this exponential growth forever. And they always look back and say, well, this is different.
Ken, is it?
He says they're usually right. Every bubble is different. The technology often is revolutionary. But that doesn't mean it can't still be a bubble fueled by too much capital and unrealistic short-term expectations.
But the long-term impact is usually understated.
That's the thing. When the dust settles, the world is permanently changed, and often in ways we didn't expect. Evans gives this powerful example, the rise of U.S. heterosexual couples meeting online. In the mid-90s, that was rare, kind of odd.
Yeah, stigmatized even.
For sure. By 2020, it had skyrocketed to nearly 60%. The internet went from being this new thing to just a basic, invisible part of our social infrastructure. That's a permanent change.
So if the internet gave us hundreds of specialized business apps, where does generative AI fit in?
Generative AI is the foundational layer underneath all of those. It promises to automate the inputs and outputs across every single one of those existing tools and the millions of workflows they manage. It's a horizontal change that cuts across every vertical at once.
And that uncertainty is what's driving this staggering investment we're seeing. Which brings us right to the engine room, the CapEx surge. The feeling inside big tech right now isn't just optimism, it's classic existential FOMO, fear of missing out. They see AI as the biggest opportunity and the biggest threat to their core businesses. Search, cloud, social media, all at once.
And you can see it in what the CEOs are saying.
Absolutely. Sundar Pichai at Alphabet said back in Q2 2024 that the risk of underinvesting is significantly greater than the risk of overinvesting. And Mark Zuckerberg basically said the worst case is they pre-build capacity for a couple of years.
When leaders frame billions of dollars as just a minor hedging cost, it signals total commitment. They know that if they miss this, they could face the same fate Microsoft did with mobile: irrelevance.
And this mindset has led to investment figures that just dwarf previous cycles. Even the cloud build-out.
The scale is unprecedented.
Yeah.
Evans shows that in 2025 alone, the big four, Microsoft, AWS, Alphabet, and Meta, spent about $400 billion in CapEx.
$400 billion.
Yep. And to put that into perspective for you, global telecom spending, fiber cables, cell towers, everything, is around $300 billion a year.
So big tech's AI spending in 1 year is already more than the entire global budget for telecommunications infrastructure. That is staggering.
And it's the velocity, too. Planned CapEx growth for 2025 almost doubled mid-year. They just keep pouring more money in, believing that more compute power makes the models better, and they haven't hit the limit yet.
And they can do this because they're all sitting on these enormous piles of cash.
Correct. Their free cash flow has surged since the pandemic. So they're taking the profits from their current platforms, Search, Windows, AWS, and converting them directly into chips, data centers, and power to secure their position on the next platform.
But you can't just click buy on $400 billion of infrastructure. This surge has created these massive, painful bottlenecks across the entire supply chain, starting literally with the ground.
We are seeing a colossal shift in real-world capital. In the U.S., the value of data center construction is now overtaking the value of office construction.
We're building machine bunkers instead of corporate towers.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
But those data centers need specialized gear, which brings us to the hardware bottleneck. Nvidia.
Right.
Nvidia's revenue has gone vertical, but they simply cannot keep up with demand. Every hyperscaler is in a fierce battle to get their hands on these chips. Nvidia is the central choke point for global AI ambition.
And that choke point goes even deeper, doesn't it?
It does. It goes all the way to TSMC in Taiwan, which makes the most advanced chips for Nvidia. Reports suggest TSMC is either unwilling or unable to expand its manufacturing fast enough. So you can throw $400 billion at the problem, but if the world's best chip fabricator has a physical limit, the whole world is constrained.
And then there's the constraint that no amount of money can solve easily. Power.
Power has become a huge issue. In the U.S., power demand usually grows about 2% a year. Evans suggests AI might add another 1% of growth on top of that.
What does 1% mean in real terms?
It means it's extremely hard to build out the grid that fast. Power infrastructure is slow, expensive, and faces all sorts of regulatory hurdles. Power backlogs are now a major constraint for building data centers in the U.S. You can have the land, you can have the chips, but if you can't get the power, you can't build your AI empire.
And yet, big tech seems completely undeterred. They're projecting even more spending in 2026.
Absolutely. Microsoft, Meta, Alphabet have all said to expect notably larger CapEx growth next year. Overall, some global estimates suggest data center capacity could triple by 2030. That could cost somewhere between $3 and $5 trillion.
Trillion, with a T.
It's an investment on the scale of a mature global industry like oil and gas. The commitment is total.
But the most dramatic aspiration seems to belong to OpenAI. Their capacity commitments sound almost like science fiction.
They do. They're talking about needing over 30 gigawatts of capacity, costing around $1.4 trillion. And their stated goal is to build 1 gigawatt of new construction per week.
1 gigawatt a week, that's enough to power a city every 7 days.
It is. Now, you should probably view that figure with a healthy dose of skepticism, but Evans includes it because it signals their strategy dominate through brute force infrastructure. It's a declaration of capital war.
This spending leads to one of Evans's most brilliant insights, the idea of circular revenue. How a company like OpenAI, without its own cash cow, can fund this.
It's a really intricate, high-stakes financial loop. OpenAI doesn't have the cash flow that Nvidia or Microsoft has, so they rely on partners.
Walk us through it. How does the circle work?
Okay, so start with Nvidia. They sell massive numbers of chips to hyperscalers like Microsoft, generating huge profits. Microsoft is a key buyer and also a key partner to OpenAI, funnels investment capital, sometimes as cash, sometimes as cloud credits, into OpenAI. OpenAI then uses that cash to buy more Nvidia chips, often through infrastructure partners like Oracle, who are also investing heavily.
So Nvidia's profits are essentially being recycled through its partners and back into one of its biggest future customers.
Precisely. OpenAI is swapping paper, their very expensive stock valuation, for hard assets and market position. They're using the bubble valuation to convert theoretical wealth into durable compute infrastructure. It's a completely rational move when your stock is that hot.
And meanwhile, Nvidia uses its cash to basically buy future demand and lock in their platform. It's a machine designed to turn short-term hype into long-term control.
They're building the new digital railroads. They want to make sure everyone has to use their tracks.
Now, before we move on, if you, our listener, are tracking these massive investment figures and corporate strategies, I really want to encourage you to check out the Tech Bikes LinkedIn newsletter. We consistently break down these updates on the flow of capital and the strategies driving it. It's the perfect companion to this deep dive. But now, let's ask the crucial question Evans poses. Where has all this money actually gotten us? After 3 years and hundreds of billions, the view for the product side is still surprisingly murky.
That's the huge disconnect. We have way more science and engineering, the models are better, there are more of them, but there's no real clarity on the definitive product, the shape of the market, or how anyone reliably makes money.
And the idea that the models themselves are becoming a commodity is probably the most terrifying thought for these multi-trillion-dollar companies.
The convergence is undeniable. If you look at the general benchmarks like Arena Text, the leaders OpenAI, Google, Anthropic are all extremely close. The state-of-the-art changes weekly. That technical edge is fleeting.
So if the core intelligence is a commodity, where does the value go?
It has to shift somewhere else. If I can get a model that's 95% as good for 10% of the cost, then the competition moves entirely up the stack, to user experience, to integration, to data, to distribution.
Which brings us to the user base. The numbers are huge, but the engagement seems shallow.
Take ChatGPT. 800 million weekly active users. That is a monumental number. But Evans points out two things. First, apparently only about 5% of them are paying.
Only 5%.
Right. And second, they announce weekly active users, not daily active users. DAU is the key metric for real stickiness. Do you use this every single day?
So a high WAU and a low DAU suggests a lot of people are trying it, but not many are making it a core part of their life.
Exactly. Surveys in the US and UK confirm this. Lots of people have used a chatbot once or twice, but the number who integrate it into their daily routine is much smaller. People are still looking for that killer use case.
And that is the product problem. Why is daily use so hard to achieve? Is this just an early, awkward phase, or is the killer app just harder to find than we thought?
It's the essential challenge. For many people, their job isn't flexible enough to constantly be thinking, how can I optimize this task with a raw LLM prompt? The model itself isn't the solution. It's the raw material. It's a powerful engine without a dashboard or a steering wheel.
It reminds me of the iPhone. The tech was there, but the real value came from the apps that wrapped that technology in a dedicated experience.
That's the key. The next step has to be wrapping the LLM in dedicated tooling for a specific problem. It makes you think of that classic Steve Jobs quote.
Yeah.
You've got to start with the experience and work backwards to the technology.
Right.
We've been technology-driven. The next phase has to be experience-driven.
So if the models are basically commodities and the product is the only differentiator, where is the moat now? Where is the battle?
The battleground shifts completely. The moat could be proprietary vertical data training a model on unique legal documents, for instance. It could be distribution leveraging existing platforms like Microsoft Office or Google Search, where AI is just a feature you already use.
Or it could just be scale.
Or it's just scale and capital. The ability to buy enough chips to train a model so large that no one else can afford to, forcing everyone to rent from you.
This brings us to the ultimate showdown. Bundling versus unbundling. The big guys are trying to bundle everything.
They are. OpenAI is trying to unbundle its competitors, Google Search, Excel, while simultaneously bundling everything they can think of into their own platform. It's an incredibly aggressive attempt to secure every position at once.
But where there's a bundle, there's always an unbundler.
That's the eternal strategy of software, isn't it? There are two ways to make money. You can bundle or you can unbundle. Startups are attacking this with ferocity. Y Combinator data shows this huge surge in AI companies trying to unbundle Google Search or Office with specialized AI-first products.
And they're even trying to unbundle ChatGPT itself.
Yeah, taking a commodity model, maybe an open source one, and wrapping it in a superior niche user experience for one single task, like summarizing legal contracts. The outcome of this war will really define the next decade of tech.
Okay, so that's the view from inside tech, where it's all chaos. Let's shift our focus to the rest of the world. How are existing businesses actually adopting this massive, expensive new platform?
Evans outlines a classic four-stage pattern for deployment, which is a really useful framework for any leader trying to figure this out.
What are the stages?
First, you absorb the tech, just making it a feature of something you already have. Second, you automate the obvious, easy stuff. Third, you innovate, creating totally new products. And finally, you disrupt, which means redefining the whole industry.
And where are we right now, mostly?
We are overwhelmingly in the absorb and initial automate phases. The big successes are in knowledge work, coding, marketing content, customer support. AI coding, or vibe coding, as some call it, is a genuine step change in reducing software creation costs. The engineer becomes a conductor, not a composer.
But for big, global companies, adoption seems to be moving at battleship speed, not speedboat speed.
That's because the first step for most large companies is to hire a consultant to figure it out for them. Accenture has reported a huge surge in generative AI contracts, which suggests companies are paying billions to define a pilot program. not to actually deploy something.
Cautious first steps.
Very cautious. And the deeper, more transformative stuff, the move to agentic systems, is still just experimental. McKinsey data shows it's all stuck in the pilot and experiment stages. It just takes time to deploy systems that can act autonomously within a company's complex legal and compliance rules.
And that slow rollout is a big reality check.
It is. A Morgan Stanley survey from late 2025 shows that 40% of CIOs don't plan to launch their first LLM project in production until 2026 or later. We have to remember the cloud revolution started decades ago, and it still only accounts for about 30% of global enterprise workloads.
Transformation is slow.
Difficult and slow. And once you move past the easy stuff, you hit the big automation challenge. Errors.
Hallucinations.
Exactly. The value proposition is infinite interns. But the critical challenge is that these models make mistakes. Hallucinations aren't a bug, they're a feature of probabilistic systems. The error rate isn't going to just disappear.
So if the intern makes mistakes, the value depends entirely on where you put the human in the loop.
That is the core design problem for all new software. For any task, you have to ask, how much do the errors matter? Can you build enough software around the LLM to verify its output? If a human has to check everything, you lose all the efficiency. The real money will be in building that trustworthy software wrapper.
And if these systems do work and the cost of knowledge work falls, we hit the Jevons paradox.
The Jevons paradox, applied here, asks a simple question. When a resource, in this case knowledge work, gets dramatically cheaper, do you do the same work with fewer people, or do you do way more work with the same number of people?
And historically, the answer is always expansion.
Always. Take a law firm. Does AI let them fire 80% of their junior associates? Or does it let them take on 10 times the amount of discovery work, offering a deeper, faster service than ever before? The business model changes from being constrained by capacity to generating capacity.
Or a global marketing team.
Global brands spend $1 trillion a year talking to consumers. If AI lets them generate 20 times more customized ads, the work doesn't disappear, it scales. You don't fire the marketing team, you let them run 1,000 hyper-localized campaigns instead of one global one.
The steam engine analogy Evans uses here really drives home the scale.
By 1900, the steam engine gave Britain the labor equivalent of 5 times its human population. It didn't just replace muscle, it made entirely new industries possible. So the question for us is, what becomes possible with 300 million automated interns? The potential for scale is just astronomical.
And we are already seeing this get monetized in things like recommendation systems and ads.
We're seeing immediate, tangible returns there. Google and Meta are reporting significant increases in conversion rates from their new AI models. Google saw 14% more conversions in search campaigns. Meta saw 5% on Instagram, 3% on Facebook. This is where AI moves from being a novelty to being a direct driver of billions in revenue.
And it represents a deeper philosophical shift in how these systems even work.
For 30 years, recommendation was all about correlation. If you bought packing tape, the system suggests boxes because people who buy tape often buy boxes.
Right.
Now we're moving towards systems that can potentially understand intent through language. Instead of just correlating tape with boxes, the AI might infer from a chat history that you're moving house and then recommend light bulbs or home insurance. It's a move from correlation to intent, and that represents a massive untapped layer of value.
So we end up back where we started. Is this a question for the CIO about tools or for the CEO about the entire business model? It's the latter. And we have to remember, these shifts take time. E-commerce is decades old, but still only about 30% of U.S. retail is online if you exclude gas and grocery. The old platforms are still very much here.
A good reminder.
As we wrap this up, I want to leave you with 2 points that ground all this chaos in history.
Okay.
First, when automation truly works, it just disappears. Think about elevator attendants. Before 1950, that was a real job for almost 100,000 people in the U.S. Then the automatic elevator became reliable and the job vanished. We stopped thinking about it. Today's AI will eventually just become tomorrow's standard invisible software.
It normalizes the miracle.
It does. Which leads to Larry Tetzler's quote from 1970. AI is whatever machines can't do yet. As soon as a machine masters a task, we stop calling it AI. We just call it software. So the final provocative thought for you to consider is this. The biggest corporations are spending trillions driven by fear to acquire this capability. Yet we also see that model performance is converging, and the path to a killer product is still uncertain. The fundamental battle is between capital and product, scale versus experience.
Exactly. Where will the next truly unbundled disruptive experience come from? Will it be the incumbents betting on limitless scale, or the startups betting on a superior targeted user experience that manages the complexity of the underlying models? That, for me, is the defining question for 2026.
That is a perfect point to chew on as we close out the year. Thank you for guiding us through the mechanics and the madness of this platform shift. And thank you, our listener, for joining us for this deep dive into Benedict Evans's AI Eat the World report. If this analysis shifted how you view the market, please take a moment to engage. Let us know what you think on social media. Tell us, for instance, which of those 4 deployment stages your company is in right now. And make sure you subscribe to the channel for the latest in the AI and tech world so you don't miss our next deep dive. And of course, as it's mid-December, we want to wish you and yours the very best. Warm wishes and festive greetings for the upcoming holiday season. We'll be back soon with another massive topic. Until then, stay curious.